Okay, could I have your attention? We'll call the Committee on Criminal Justice to order.
Even with those three that have been withdrawn.
Okay, but the thing about it was that you felt like that we need the Class 2 holster.
Yes, sir.
Okay, which is unavailable to anyone unless you're a law enforcement officer. The other thing was where you would display your concealed weapons permit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that was so your law enforcement officers would know that the person was in his legal right to have the gun. Okay, but then you wanted training, the firearms retention training, and ultimately in the firearms retention training, isn't it hand-to-hand combat? Isn't it actually firearm retention training is specialized law enforcement and military training that's not even available to the public? It teaches law enforcement and military officers how to stop someone by taking someone from taking your gun from you, and in most jurisdictions, it's not even taught by firearm instructors. That the NRA actually quit teaching that because those defensive tactics were so horrendous when you're talking about driving someone's nose bone into the brain.
You recognize?
Even with those amendments, the sheriffs feel very strongly, again, not to support 234.
Open carry is just a bad idea. We don't support it, and I hope it doesn't pass. Thank you.
So no questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Ryan Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators. I'm here representing several thousand members of the grassroots Florida Open Carry movement and Florida Carry Incorporated. I'm one of over 750,000 active concealed weapons firearm license holders. 23 years ago, we passed a highly controversial shall-issue law here, and the Florida Sheriff's Association and the Florida Police Chiefs Association were in opposition to it, and it was going to be we're driving down the road, killing each other on the highway, and every argument in the parking lot is going to end up in a shootout. Now, that's been 23 years. There's been 1.92 million of these licenses, and I believe 168 have been revoked for a firearms-related issue. You know, now we're on the verge of repealing this prohibition, and I don't see on the Florida Sheriff's Association legislative agenda about it. I don't see anything on the Police Chiefs Association about it. The public's not against it. A recent WCTV News report had an independent poll this month. District 3 here was 58% in favor. Even a larger margins in 2 and 4, 62% to 12% opposing it. I'm glad to hear that we got rid of the retention holster. These 41 law enforcement officers that lost their lives probably had retention holsters on too. They're tackling people and they're in corrections facilities, getting their, people fighting to get out of jail. We're just going about our daily lives. We're not going to be in a wrestling match with somebody trying to take our gun. So I'm good to hear that. And if there was a bunch of open carry issues, there's 43 states that this is legal. And this would be on every newscast every night if this was a big deal. A lot of this is just, they're not going to see you with a gun and say, hey, let's rob that guy. They're going to look for the innocent, the weak. And as far as how do they know that you're a law-abiding citizen or not if you're open carrying, the FBI studied that in 2006, and there's two things that criminals do. They don't wear holsters, and they hide them. They hide their guns. They're not going to be out there in a position to expose themselves to scrutiny from everybody else. I feel it's a slap in the face of the license holders. These arguments against it basically are emotional, and they're based on these dire prophecies, and we've heard it before, but we've got a 23-year record of being some of the least likely people to cause anybody a problem in the criminal justice system. And I'd really like to ask that you favorably consider this bill and do it on the mountain of evidence that shows that, in all these states. And as far as tourism, they're coming from 43 of the 50 states that allow it to come visit here. So the idea that that's going to stop tourism, I feel frankly, is just not the case.
Senator questions, thank you for your appearance today.
Appreciate it.
Again, Marion Hammer, would you like to address on the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. The open carry provision of this bill was primarily to deal with a problem that is an ongoing and growing problem. People who are licensed to carry concealed can be arrested and charged with a crime if the wind blows a jacket open and a firearm is exposed. The law says you may carry concealed. Numerous people have been arrested and charged with brandishing when the wind merely blew open a jacket or they reached up and a firearm was exposed. Some have been arrested and charged with a crime for violating the open carry law. When an individual's firearm is accidentally, unintentionally, or inadvertently exposed, they should not be subjected to a crime. Those are subjective terms. The only way that you can really protect the license holder is to put language in that says you may carry concealed or openly. If you're allowed to carry openly, it's accidentally exposed, you can't be charged with anything. I keep getting calls from people. I got a call the other day. An individual a lot of y'all may know, Frank Darden with the school boards, called. He had been arrested. He had a firearm in his pocket when he went fishing, perfectly legal. He also had a carry permit. Had to take a friend to the hospital because he got a hook caught in his hand. He couldn't get out. He didn't realize it, but a little hole had rubbed in his pocket and the tip of the barrel was exposed. He was sitting in the waiting room of the hospital waiting on his friend to get medical treatment, and a security guard came up to him and asked him what was in his pocket. When he looked down and realized that less than 1/4 of an inch of the barrel was showing, he just shifted it without ever putting his hand in his pocket. Security guard said it was fine. A little bit later, he came over and asked him if he'd take it outside and put it in the car, and he said, sure. So he got up and he went outside to put it in the car, and when he walked outside, there are all these law enforcement officers out there screaming down on the ground. They arrested him, put him in handcuffs, put handcuffs on so tight they cut his wrist, severed nerves. They had a big lawsuit. They charged him with brandishing a firearm. He didn't brandish. This sort of thing, the attorney that handled his case has handled a lot of cases. This language is designed to protect license holders from that sort of thing. And the reality is, when you get a license to carry concealed, most people don't want to carry it openly. I sure don't. And I have yet to talk to many people who would even consider carrying openly. But it's just more of this emotional stuff. I will tell you that firearm retention training is in fact hand-to-hand combat training. It is not available to the general public. The National Rifle Association trains trainers. We train more trainers than anybody else. We quit teaching firearms retention because so many students get injured taking the training because they teach you moves that effectively break hands and wrists and fingers and backs. In the military, it's just simply somebody goes for your gun. They have a series of moves. You break the wrist, you hit them in the Adam's apple, and then you shove the septum into the brain if you can. Military are trained to kill if somebody tries to take your gun. And I don't think we want average citizens going through that kind of training. I don't think most average citizens could even complete it if it were available, but it definitely is not available. This is a good bill. this bill basically makes some clarification to concealed weapons license holders, and we urge you to support it.
Any further discussion? Senator Edwards, you're recognized to close.
Members, I thank you, and I really appreciate your diligence with us working with this bill. You know, if we had more common sense, we would need less statutes on the books. And, you know, and I, for one, have strong convictions about property rights, very strong, and I think you know that. But I'll also say this, that this bill, you're not going to see, Senator Margolis, you're not going to see folks walking down the street of Tallahassee with their gun, because if you did, when you went to Alabama, you'd see it. When you went to Georgia, you'd see it. There's already 43 other states that allows for open carry. So with that, you know, I appreciate your vote. I appreciate your support on this good bill. And I close.
Senator Smith moves a CS without objection on this bill. Will the Secretary please call a roll on CS for Senate Bill 234?
Senator Dockery? Yes. Senator Margolis?
No.
Senator Smith? No. Senator Evers?
Yes.
Chairman Dean?
Yes, and by members, by your bill today, the bill passes.
I'd like to call the Rules Committee to order and ask Jenny if you'd call the roll, please. Further questions?
Mr.
Senator Siplin.
Yes. Yeah. What is the reason why we want to have an open carry gun policy?
Well, this would.
Senator Evers.
Thank you, Chair. What this would do would enable a person, if they were carrying a gun concealed and accidentally got exposed, because we do have an open policy, it would be permissible. Also, if a person were to stand outside their vehicle and take their coat off and their gun was exposed, you do have open carry. If they ran into a place of business, if it was permissible to go in that place of business, they wouldn't necessarily have to put their coat on in order to walk in the door, grab a Coke, and walk back out.
Welcome, Sheriff.
Thank you. Good morning, members. And I'm just going to be real brief because I know my colleagues have some comments that they want to make, but I need to tell you that the Florida Sheriff's Association, as you might expect, is unequivocally supports Second Amendment constitutional rights to bear arms and encourages responsible citizens to obtain concealed weapons permits and to legally possess firearms and carry them in an authorized concealed manner. The sight of citizens visibly carrying firearms in public is alarming and intimidating to many citizens and individuals who live and reside in our community, in addition to the visitors that routinely visit the state of Florida. And this is why most sheriffs in our state have policies that prohibit law enforcement officers from openly carrying weapons unless they are in uniform. So I just don't see where there's a reasonable or even a legitimate need for this bill. I just really don't. And I just would encourage you, on behalf of the Florida Sheriff's Association, to oppose this bill. And thank you. And I'll defer to my colleagues for any additional comments.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brian Pitts. Just Jesus on the matter. As Sheriff Bradley just said, what's the need? It would only be a need unless someone's right is being violated, and you're trying to fix that. But where's the violation at? Because it also has to compete with other rights of those who may be offended by such a matter.
Thank you, sir. Ryan Ramsey. Ryan Ramsey. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't see you over there. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here today representing several thousand members of the grassroots open carry movement and Florida Carry Incorporated. I'm one of over 800,000 concealed carry permit holders in this state. 23 years ago, the legislature passed a controversial bill giving us shall issue carry rights. Okay, this bill went across the country. Crime rates go down. The more people carrying guns, civilians, is better for everybody. When the bill was being argued then, we were going to have rolling shootouts over road rage. It was going to be a, fender bender is going to turn into a shootout. None of that happened. You know, it's not the case. Now, they want to talk about, well, how do I know if the guy open carrying is a permit holder? Well, you know, if you're openly carrying your gun, you're exposing yourself to scrutiny, and you're likely not a criminal. The FBI has studied that in 2006. Criminals do not open carry, and they don't use holsters. There's 1.92 million plus permit holders in this state. There's been 168 of them in 23 years have been revoked for a firearms-related offense. That record is sterling. Now, I'm looking here at the statistics from National Police Misconduct Report and the Florida Division of Licensing, and there's 35,520 law enforcement officers in this state. 265 were cited for misconduct last year. There's 800,000 permit holders, and 265 were cited last year or had their permits revoked. So we're 22.5 times less likely to have our permit revoked than a law enforcement officer is to commit misconduct, and yet they're in here allowed to open carry. And basically, there's people that are getting arrested from getting the soup can off the bottom shelf at the store and their gun rides up. That's on camera. It's a crime. You committed a crime. It's on camera. It's just, you know, I'd ask that you'd favorably consider this bill. Everybody says I support the Second Amendment, but, well, you know, I just ask